Welcome to Flights, the podcast where we uncork the secrets to running a successful destination wedding and group travel business. Each episode, we will explore the good, bad, and ugly of destination weddings while sipping on the finest wines from our pantries.
As your hosts, we believe in savoring the journey with a glass of wine in hand. Join us, Mario Lopez and Ashley Morris of Destination Wedding University, as we explore all of the adventures and misadventures that we experience in this crazy industry.
All right, welcome back. It's to episode 6 of Flights. Ashley and I are off to a great start today.
Yeah, we are giggling because let me say there will be some outtakes of this. I think we're on attempt number 3 to get started. Mario was yawning. I was adjusting my shirt in a very unladylike way. And we should just say that we're recording this the day after Thanksgiving and we're kind of on the struggle bus. But that doesn't mean that the topic is not important because it's very timely. We're talking about engagement season. And some people, if you're newer to weddings, you may not know that there is a season for engagements. And that's important for us as professionals that focus on weddings because all of these new couples are about to flood our marketplace, like our universe. And it's up to us to attract them and bring them into the fold.
Absolutely. So for those of you that are new to the industry and just kind of experiencing this for your first time, if you've already kind of been going for the past couple months, you may have noticed that the past couple months have felt like a little bit of lull for new business, right? Like your existing business has been moving along just along fine, but new business, new consults, new conversations, that may have slowed down a little bit. The reason for that is because we are about to hit engagement season, which runs from roughly Christmas until Valentine's Day, basically throughout the holidays as families are getting together and people are, spending time with their close ones, with their loved ones. This is the time where people surprise and they get down on one knee and they do the big grand gesture. And this is the time that happens. And then as soon as that happens, they're immediately in wedding planning mode. Yes. So just a couple little stats here. 40% of couples get engaged during that engagement season from Christmas to Valentine's Day.
40%. That's almost half. It's a huge number.
It's huge. I mean, if you consider then the potential that's out there for new clients to come in, that timing is, it accounts for a lot of your year as a destination wedding professional.
And you can see it too. I mean, it's not just about us. If people just pay attention to marketing right now, who are you seeing? Jewelers, like every jeweler. That's why jewelers advertise in the NFL. Like I believe it's K is a big sponsor in the NFL. Football season, getting in that mindset, getting people prepared. Just look around. You're going to see so much like engagement related content right now.
Every gift begins with K.
Oh, we should sponsor us, please. But look how well that worked embedded in your brain. So that's what we're trying to help people like be in that position when this market is going to, refresh with a bunch of new couples here over the next 3 to 4 months. Today's episode is about helping people prepare for that and be in the right professional position to receive all these new leads that can come in.
Absolutely. And then to give you kind of an idea of what that timeline looks like, in 2022, the average timeline for engagement was 15 months.
It's a long time.
Yeah, if they're getting engaged in December of 2023, you're looking at a March of 2025 wedding. So these groups, these are setting you up for your end of 24, beginning of 25 timeline. And then, of course, there's some that are going to push you on a shorter timeline. There's some that'll push you a little bit longer. But this will be kind of where that bulk of that business comes from.
Funny story about that stat. Do you know that that's what pushed me to finally quit my full-time job? That right there. I was having drinks with a friend. This is when I was still commuting back and forth to New York all the time. And we were sitting outside and I said what I think a lot of people say when they still have a full-time job and they're starting to build their travel business. I said, I'm just not ready. Like, I'm just not ready. And he said, well, aren't people engaged for a long time? His wife was a divorce attorney, full disclosure. So he had some exposure to family law and that side of the business. He's like, well, people are engaged for a long time. If you don't have the time to put into this now, it's not about missing today's couple. It's about missing that couple for 2025 or for, at the time, different year. But like there is a path in motion. And that was what finally clicked in my head of like, oh my gosh, I have to put more time into this now. There's not going to be a pipeline of future brides if I can't dedicate some time to them now. Like it's about the future and the opportunity of what you're missing.
Right. Absolutely. And then that also kind of leads us. So that's that's kind of a higher level sense of urgency. That also leads us into a little bit more micro level when we're talking about the couples and what kind of wedding they're planning on having. If is it going to be local? Is it going to be destination? Is it going to be, on a river? Is it going to be whatever they're going to decide to do? They're making that decision within 30 to 45 days after they're getting engaged. So that planning time is going to be 15 months, but their decisions on what they're doing and your chance to really get in their ear and talk about, what their options are is a month and a half.
So we book at Alpaca, we probably book about a third, I would say maybe like a third to 40% of all of our weddings are booked within this time period. So like my 2025, I will book a little shy of half of those couples in February, March, April. That's why this Q1 is so important. I'm sure your numbers are really similar. Like Absolutely. It's just a big time of year. That's why I'm very conscious of how much I travel in Q1. I'm very conscious of other like time conflicts on my plate because I've got to be open for business. I've got to be having consults and I've got to be getting these people in the door. This is the window.
I spend so much time attending conferences and, doing site tours and whatnot, October, November, kind of in that area. It's for the fact that January, February, March, I'm home. I'm in the office. I want people to see the environment that they're going to be speaking to me in. So, when I do all my video consults and whatnot, it's here, and I'm making sure that I'm having those conversations in kind of that space and also in that headspace, right?
Yep. So here we are, end of November, getting ready in December. We kind of have this quiet month. Like you said, things are a little slower right now. So how can people use this time, this next 4 to 6 weeks, to really buckle down and get prepared? Everything from like cleaning and saging your office all the way to, I guess, like kind of virtually cleaning and saving your digital, saging your digital presence. Like just taking a hard look at what's out there and maybe implement some changes for this next season.
Absolutely. So, and that kind of leads us into, some of the things that we teach within the playbook, within the university, and how everything's broken down. There's 4 different modules that we talk about when we're talking in the university. And those 4, it's going to start us off with niche, which is just kind of identifying that's, where you want to be within the industry. For our niche, for the purposes of this podcast and for what we teach in the playbook, it's destination weddings, right? And groups and that first part of it is identifying that and making sure that we have the proper information there.
We're going to assume if you're listening, you're already there. Like we're here.
Yes.
For purposes of today. Why would you be listening to us ramble otherwise?
Then we start talking about the next one is going to be attraction. So, and that's a lot of this conversation, talking about engagement season is attracting those couples, making sure that you're visible to them, that they see you, that they hear the conversation, that information is out there, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And you were talking about kind of the digital cleanup. That's a little bit of that digital cleanup. This is the time that you should be looking at, your website, your nurture sequences, things like that. And we'll talk about that, in greater detail. Then we're talking about the next module within the playbook is going to be conversion. So you've now attracted those people that they're in your funnel. And now how do you convert them from a lead to a sale?
Yeah.
And we'll dive into a little bit about that here. Attraction, conversion are kind of the main sections that we're talking about when we're talking engagement season. The last piece within the playbook, just an honorable mention, is automation. We'll touch on that a little bit with some of these, with some of the nurture sequences and whatnot, some of the schedulers, but automation is going to be more about how do we keep them moving within our funnel, within our company once they're there.
That is my favorite topic, but you can't do any of that until you do this. It's like you can't have dessert before dinner. I mean, you can, but most people don't. You have to get through some of these things before you can even begin to think about automation. And I know automation is like the big sexy topic and everybody wants to jump right into that. But what is the point of automating anything if you don't know who you're talking to, what you can offer them, like that attraction, like what you're offering them and what your process is to work? You will waste so much time, energy, and money if you skip all of that and go straight to automation. You have to do the homework first.
Absolutely. So I guess kind of on that note, Ashley, we're talking about, first of all, a lot of these stats that we're going through today. If you're a destination wedding professional, this is the time that you should really be focusing on some of your research and, just finding out what the trends were in the past and moving forward. things like this podcast are a great resource for that. There's, you know, a lot of other resources out there. Some of the things that we're speaking towards today, just so that, you know, you see kind of where some of the stats are from. There's a 2022 real wedding survey from the Knot that had some really great information that as a professional, as a destination wedding professional, you should be researching a little bit and making sure that you understand where those numbers are coming from. The 2023 Global Wedding Report from the Knot was also a great one, has some great information in there. So I guess on that note, tell us a little about who we're talking to.
Who we're talking to. Yeah. So those studies are great. If you're not familiar, the Knot, I think everyone knows who the Knot is, or most people do. The Knot and Wedding Wire merged, and they are now known as Wedding Pro. So that's where you can find that survey, and we can link to it too. But that is one of the most respected wedding surveys in the industry. I was using that 15 years ago when I still worked for Kohl's corporate, and I was in marketing working on bridal registry, because we said bridal registry then, and now we say wedding to be more inclusive. So it's just funny how times have changed. But when I worked on registry, that survey was like the Bible. We used it for all of our planning. So if a company as big as Kohl's or Target, the companies that I worked for in the past, are referencing this study, then there's probably something valuable for us as small business owners. So take a look at that. There's a lot of good info. But this next season is going to be interesting because, you know, the pandemic is finally behind us. We have a new, fresh set of couples waiting, you know, who were getting engaged or about to get engaged. It's a different audience. We're kind of seeing that turn. Millennials are kind of aging out of the core marrying age. Dude, I'm like more Gen Z than millennial, so it makes me feel even more ancient, or Gen X, not Gen Z. So it makes me feel even more ancient. But, you know, millennials are kind of 26 to or late 30s, early 40s, and Gen Z is really that 18 to 25. So a lot of people kind of coming into this are right on that cusp between Gen Z and millennial. So we're going to start to see some of those Gen Z habits. And this is a different group. They have fully grown up in the digital space. They do, you know, one thing I always think about is I've got to change like my pop culture references. I've got to change like my social references, because one day I'm going to talk to a couple and they're not going to know what the hell I'm talking about. But
that's already happened to me.
Yeah. See, there you go. So this audience, they kind of have, you know, some big pillars that they're working with. Everyone, but especially this group, wants to like capture and share the moment of not just their wedding, but their engagement, the dress, the planning. Everything is a moment, and everything is a moment that can be like curated and shared. So that's something to keep in mind.
Pressure. Oh, sorry.
Pressure. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about an audience that did promposals. Like, people were proposing to go to prom. The bar is high for these couples.
It's the amount of, or the level of polished that these moments needs to be for them is, I mean, just through the roof. It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's who we're talking to. The kind of in line, this is a group that wants to make a big statement. Everything needs to have a wow moment. And that includes planning their destination wedding. They're not looking for the same cookie cutter, pick flower A, pick flower B. Like, they're looking for big wow moments. And we have to be educated on how we can provide that for them. And then obviously, this goes without saying, but this is a group that is going to be fully immersed in technology to plan. So if you're still struggling with your own tech setup, think about what that looks like to a couple that's checking you out. If you're not on top of your tech and your process, think of what that looks like to someone who's 24 or 25 years old that's been doing this since birth.
It's so important not to be fumbling on your tech when you're talking to people, especially live. You want to make sure that you are well versed in all the tools that you're using.
Yeah, it's not the time to, you know, make jokes or say, oh, sorry, I don't know how I'm doing. Like, that it's just not acceptable. Like, people have to figure that out. I also think a mistake I see people making is not putting themselves in the couple's shoes when looking at some of these things. So if you are newer to weddings or trying to build this part of your business, you probably owe it to them and to you to take a weekend, like check out some wedding planning websites, like check out some wedding planning hashtags and things on social, like just search for destination wedding the way that a wedding couple would and see what they see, because that's your competition. Your competition isn't other travel agents or other hotels. Like your competition is the whole wedding space around them and all the messages that they're getting bombarded with from not even the second they get engaged, probably a month prior to even getting engaged. They're just surrounded by this content and you need to see what's out there.
I would love for, it's one of the big things that we speak about within the community is community over competition. And the reason we talk about that is because I would love for a couple that has come and done a consultation with me. If I am not the correct fit for them, I would still love them to end up with an agent. It's with an advisor, someone who can really guide them throughout their process. It pains me to see, some of these couples that decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to work with an advisor for whatever reason, especially after they've done a consultation, and then they move on to something else. It's our job to educate them on why they should always have someone, because in the end, throughout the process, as things go sideways, as they tend to do, someone who is well versed within the industry and has the connections can make things a lot easier. Maybe not totally polish things over, but can make things a lot easier throughout the process to make sure that they're getting the best result in the end.
Yeah, we're all here to help, or at least I should say, our small corner of the wedding world, we believe in community over competition. Right. And I truly believe there is enough business in this space for everyone. Something that Will used to always mention, and it still blows my mind, is that Hard Rock Punta Cana, one resort, does 800 weddings a year. 800. How many weddings do I need to meet my business plan and my goals? Not 800. I can tell you that. So if that's just one resort, think of how much business there is out there. And these are the things your couples are seeing. So think like the couple. Go spend a weekend researching like they do. Imagine, give yourself the luxury or the fantasy of being a 25-year-old bride for a weekend and go out there and look. There are still bridal magazines. Take a peek. There are so many websites and so many different niches of bride. This age group is very big on personalization. So not everyone's wedding is going to be the same, and they know that. So look at all the different, there's snarky bride groups. There's romantic bride groups. There's you got to know the personality that's going to work for you. And it's going back to that module about attraction, is really understanding who your ideal couple is. If you're new, you may not know who that is yet, and that's fine. This is your time to kind of figure that out, but at least go out and expose yourself to all the information that's out there and put yourself in their shoes. Travel agents are really guilty of kind of just living in their bubble and only thinking about travel and not thinking about what their ideal client is consuming when it comes to media. So this group has some challenges. This is a reference to the Real Wedding Survey. 47% of these couples say that their top challenge is budget, which is fair. The economy is wild right now. And there's, we have student loan debt and housing prices and inflation and everything else. Budget is very top of mind. 36% say that their top challenge is their guest list. And I'm guessing that's very directly related to budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a destination wedding is great for both of those. It's something that for people who want experiences over stuff, quality time with their friends and family, a vacation, not just a wedding, we're perfectly positioned as destination wedding, experts to kind of speak to some of those concerns and show them how a destination wedding might be the perfect fit for what they're looking for. And that's where we get into the attraction.
Right. One of my favorite conversations that I like to have with our new couples is, I would say probably 80%, of couples will come to us and say, hey, we plan on having 100 to 150 people at our wedding, and it's going to be, this big blowout. Everyone's going to come. They've already told us yes. I was like, okay. So one of the stats that we like to talk about is you have 150 people. I'm pulling out by the way, for those not on YouTube, I'm pulling out my trusty calculator. It's my Office Depot calculator. It's very nice. So let's say that you have 150 people come into your wedding. We say that you can plan easily. Only about 75 of those people, 75%, not 75, 75% of those people are going to actually make it, or at least make the proper effort to come to the wedding, right? That is also, there's a direct correlation to the resort that you choose and the amount of time that you give them to plan, right? So you have to keep in mind that a lot of these people, the guests that are coming, are talking about, their family vacation, and they're making your wedding that family vacation. So when they're talking about, that guest list and how many people are coming, you can still invite a good amount of people, because if you give them, the proper amount of time, that 150 person guest list is now only 110-ish.
Yeah. Right? It may be not even that. I think that's on the high side, honestly. For me, it's more like 50 to 60. But what I always tell couples too is a destination wedding can also be a barrier if you're trying to keep those numbers small. So some people come to me and they say, we want to invite as many people as possible. We'll compromise on what we want to pick a resort that's affordable for everyone, easy to get to. We just want as many people as possible there. But other people come to me and they say, we don't want as many people. We want it to be intimate. We want it to be small. So make it more complicated, make it more expensive, make it harder for people to get there, because that's how they're going to meet that budget concern, is by just having a smaller group. And I think it's important to show these couples, when we talk about consults, we're going to talk about that, but showing them that it's a range and it's choose your own adventure, but let me in, like, let me know what your plans are so I can help you craft an experience that's going to meet that.
Right. So you started going into it a little bit there. And I guess when we're talking about attraction, it's so important to talk about how you prepare for the leads that are coming in, because you need to know who you're talking to. Who are these couples? Are you talking to $100,000 household, a $60,000 household? Are you talking to a $200,000 household? Those are very different conversations that you're having, right? And who is your ideal couple? That's, it's one of these tools that a lot of salespeople will tell you need to do, and they tell you it because it's important. That's, you want to make sure that you're mapping out who this person is. That's, one of our favorite things to do. That's our ideal bride. Her name is Jessica. Jessica is a business professional. She makes $100,000 a year. She lives in so-and-so part of the country, whatever it is, whatever things that you want to identify on who that person is and who you're attracting. It's so important to map that out right in the beginning, so you know what you're looking at and you know who you're speaking towards. That will help literally attract the person that's going to be coming in and that you're going to be speaking to, right?
Well, and it's almost like the concept of vision boards I struggle with. It's just not for me, but I get the concept of it, of like, you've got to picture who you're talking to. Like, are you talking to a Nordstrom couple or a Walmart couple? You got to know, because those are very different ways of approaching it. They are going to spend differently. They're going to communicate differently. And you have to figure out where you fit into that spectrum. And it's also important to not sell from your own wallet. Like, you may not fit into one of those categories, but if you're attracting, or if you want to attract someone in one of those buckets, you've got to think like that and be like that and just understand that. Don't worry about things. Just because you wouldn't choose something or spend something doesn't mean that that couple wouldn't.
That is one of my favorite lessons that I've ever learned in my sales career, is to not sell from your own pocket. It's so important. And by the way, from that note from before, the Walmart couple or the Nordstrom couple is okay. Either one that you decide to go with. But you just need to know which one that you're going to be speaking towards, because like you said, it is a completely different conversation that you're going to be, having.
So you talked about Jessica, your ideal. Mine's more like personality profile. Like I'm going to say they, because I have a lot of grooms too, but it's grooms as the lead. Grooms. I have weddings where I've never even talked to the bride, or, the other groom. It's interesting how that dynamic is shifting. But mine is more of like busy professional, appreciates expertise and will pay for it. I'm not a DIY bride person. I know there's some people that are, but I'm not a DIY wedding couple person. But mine is more like, they trust you, they have a sense of humor, and they're a little offbeat. Look at the name of my business. My couples are all, if you chose me with a name like Alpaca Your Bags Travel, you probably have a sense of humor and you're probably a little quirky. And those are my people. I know that it's not just about the service I can provide to them, because of course I can. It's, am I going to enjoy working with these people for the next 12 months? I want to make sure we're a good personality fit too. And sketching out this whole attraction and who your ideal person is really helps with that.
Absolutely. And then kind of on that same note about, the personality profile, then it's, where are these people spending their time and who is influencing them? Like, such an important conversation to have with yourself, with your team, with, talking about, are they getting their information online? Are they, where are they pulling this information from? And they're going to bring that and put it in front of you. So you need to know kind of how to be able to respond to it and have that conversation with them. Right.
Yep. It's so important. But I want to add this too. If you are starting out, you may not know, and that's okay, but have a plan. Like, just pick who you think it is. You can always zig and zag away from a plan, but the important is to have a focus. Don't, this is kind of hard, because at the beginning, you sort of just have to take everyone that comes in the door because you're trying to build your business. But what I want you to do is to pay attention as you're doing that. Pay attention to what you like, what you don't, like what works, because later when you do have a few more weddings under your belt and you can be a little more choosy about who you work with, you know what you like and what you don't. I recognize that at the beginning, it's really hard to choose a niche or an ideal client because you don't know yet. You haven't like experienced it. So take everything, build your business. This is a time to learn and then use that information later.
One of my biggest pet peeves, and it's so like just the cliche lines that people say in sales, it drives me insane. But it's so true. This one, that's if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's 100% what applies here. Like it's just try and get yourself out in front of the conversation. You don't need to be, completely 100%. This is what it is and rigid. But if you have an idea of what you're looking at, it's going to help you so much plan for those conversations.
And sometimes it's easier to express it as the negative, like, what you don't like, and so think about that and then focus on the opposite, focus on the positive side of that.
And then if you identify who those people are, you can build a plan around what you're going to speak towards, because you have at least given it some thought and you're not walking into it blind. Right.
So we're spending a lot of time on this, but it's because it's important. And this is something that as people start to build out their wedding business, this is probably one of the biggest lessons. You've got to know who you're talking to. You have to know who's going to work for you and who isn't. You can't be, what's that saying about I'm going to mess it up, but it's like, it's the gist of it. Wow, I'm really fucking this up. You can't, it's like, if you can't dabble, you have to be an expert in something, or you're not an expert in everything. What is it? I'll think of it later. But you just got to have a focus. And that's something in the playbook that we spend a lot of time on. And we're obviously spending a lot of time on it here because it's going to set up the rest of this conversation. You
hit it on the head 100%, because if you're just not the saying, you didn't hit the saying on the head, and I can't think of the saying either.
You talk and I'm going to look it up because it's making me crazy. People are listening and they're like,
everyone's screaming it into the phone right now. That's
it. Get it together, people.
But that's 100% of the case, right? Like the dabbling is where you tend to lose traction, because if you're not focused and zeroed in on one piece of the business and making sure that this is the direction that you're heading in, then all of a sudden you're spreading your resources out a little too far. Right? So
there's a niche for everyone. And it's not, we were trying to move on and I'm blocking that, but I have a coaching client that I work with separately, and she used to be a high school band director, and now she's getting into travel. And I'm like, you are the conductor. You are the conductor of chaos. You go out there and find those wedding couples that used to be in band and they really respond to that. There's so many ways that you can niche down and really find your ideal audience. I mean, look at there is a dating site for everything. If there is a farmers only, you can be the destination wedding planner that used to be a band director. You know what I mean? There is something for everybody. Wow, that took a turn.
It took a turn. One little note on that turn is that I was at Home Goods with Will 2 years ago. There was a conductor of chaos desk plate. And I wanted it so bad. I regret not buying it because it was.
Oh, I hate that. When you see something and you don't buy it and then you still think of it years later.
Yeah. That's the worst. I think about it all the time. Anyways, so back.
Someone's going to find it and you're going to get 5 of them now. Okay. Someone's just going to start sending them to you. All right.
So then I guess from there, the reason we talk about identifying all that, and the reason that you take the time to figure out who these people are and what's influencing them and where they're going to get their coffee, and you think about all those little details, is because that is going to start influencing your marketing plan. It's going to start influencing how you're attracting them. Are you attending bridal shows? We can talk a whole conversation about bridal shows. Are you using a lead magnet? Are you on social? And if you're on social, are you on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? Where are you? YouTube. But all of that information is going to influence that plan and help you make that, which is why it's so important to take the time and identify it. And during these months where I say slow, but it all depends on your business. But the new business is a little slower right now across the board, right? This is the time that you look at all of those things.
Yeah. So let's talk about what to actually do. People are like, all right, shut up. Tell us what to do. quit rambling. Tell us what to do. Jack of all trades, master of none is what I was trying to say. There's a different way of saying it, but that's kind of the gist of it. If you're just going to dabble, then you're not an expert in anything. So try to focus in on what is yours. This is still bothering me, so I'm going to find it later. All right. So what can you do? We talked about understanding who your couple is, understanding this is drawing from my old job, understanding the media landscape that they're experiencing, like
Nice.
knowing,
Oh,
and I
nice.
could still pull that stuff out. But knowing where they are, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, who is influencing them, have some idea of what that is, because that's what they're comparing you to. And so here's a couple of things that we are going to recommend that people do in this quiet time. So you've got to like audit yourself in the most like neutral way possible. Set your ego aside. Set your feelings aside. I know how much time you spent on that website. I know how much time you spent on that social. I don't care. Like, you've got to be neutral and think about it the way, if someone were meeting you for the first time, what would your website and your social say about you? And does that match this ideal person that you're trying to attract? Because that's what we're trying to do, is attract. So is your website, does it reflect you? Does it reflect your business and your values? This audience more than ever cares about values. It's not just enough to do business with someone. They have to feel good about doing business with you. So how does your website show that? How does your social show that? Like, are you active or are you not? Some people really need to update their headshots. I'm just going to call people out. I am sorry to just put people on blast for that. But if you are still using the same headshot from 15 years ago and it doesn't match what you actually look like, that couple's going to be real shocked when they get on a Zoom with you and not recognize who this person is.
It's important to be your authentic self, and that's part of being authentic.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that's really awesome about this, like Gen Z and, younger millennial audiences, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, it's, authenticity is so much more valued than perfection. And if you've been in this business a while, if you have some years under your belt and some life experience, you may be really focused on, well, it's not perfect, or, oh, I didn't put makeup on, or, oh, I didn't do this. This audience doesn't care. Like, they don't. Just being your authentic, true self. People buy from who they know, like, and trust. And you've got to put yourself out there as someone that they will know, like, and trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would so much rather speak to someone who I automatically feel like I have that connection with. And the only way that I feel like I have that connection is if you pick up that authenticity. If you have someone that's polished and corporate, is something that Will yelled at me all the time for, is I tended to be more buttoned up and corporate, and it didn't translate well. When I was speaking to people, it came off as cold and that I was trying to portray something. Whereas, if I be, this mess of a self that I am, it comes off so much better, and people actually, enjoy the conversation a little bit more. So,
well, I think, it's like buying a house. All the inventory is the same. All those available houses are the same. With resorts, we're all like looking at the same resorts. Nobody has some secret wedding venue that they haven't told people about. Like, we're all dealing with the same stuff. So people can book a wedding with anyone. They want to work with someone they like. They want to work with someone that they enjoy spending time with, because this is a commitment. We're talking, 14 to 18 months on some of these relationships. And so when a couple is, literally Googling destination weddings or, searching for hashtags or whatever, they aren't just thinking like, oh, does this person have, this access to this beautiful property? It's, am I going to enjoy working with them for the next 14 months? So you've got to find a way to put that out there so people know who you are. And you can't do that if you're hiding behind this like generic website with the same vendor photo that everyone else is using. You might need to look at your photos and update them. If you have anything that resembles like the 80s poofy sleeve V veil. You know what I'm trying to say?
The image popped in my head immediately.
Well, because everyone knows that it's a very dated image. And, photography has changed a lot. So just take a look. If it's been a few years since you've updated your stuff, think about the message you're sending to that couple and think about all the other images they're seeing from other kinds of wedding things. And it might be time to make some quick swaps. I'm not saying you have to spend a ton of money, just swap out some photos, update your bio in Instagram, update, include some of your personal life, because people love to see that. It doesn't have to be so generic. There's a lot of travel agent websites I see that don't even have the name of the agent on them. It's like, beautiful beach bride, whatever. If that is somebody's real website, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you. I just made that up. But there's no about me. There's no about page or how I started it. Like, these are all things that people want to know about you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I care a lot about this. That's why I got so animated. I just think it's like what we talked about with Amanda was that episode 4, where like being your authentic self is so important, but especially to this audience.
Has to translate through. It does. It's so I guess from there, so now you've gone through and you've audited your site and you've took a look at your socials and, you know, any outward facing tool that you have out there, right? Socials,
Yeah.
blogs, you've gone through and you've updated any of
Google
that.
your own name, like
Oh,
search for your own name, like Mario Lopez Destination Wedding, then see what comes up, because that's what people are probably going to do.
the hardest thing about my name is
Oh, that's true.
fucking Mario Lopez. And
Mario Lopez.
if I have not told that story, I will tell that story at another time about why I used to be okay with Mario Lopez and I no longer like the man. That's him and I can fight it out sometimes.
Mario M. Lopez has a grudge match against Saved by the Bell. Mario Lopez.
Why I always add the initial to mine, because otherwise that's anyways, side note.
And
So,
he will be a guest on episode 7. Excuse me. I know you're very busy with your Access Hollywood and your whatever he does now. Could you come be on our podcast?
Exactly. It's so anyways, so the reason that you're doing all this, the reason that you're updating it is because you want to be able to speak to these people that are coming into your funnel and make sure that you're capturing their attention. The other piece of it is that you know, as we're taking this time to update things, we want to make sure we're updating the pieces that once they're in your funnel, that you're able to actually, you know, make the process as easy as possible for them. And that, you know, it's not something where they're emailing you 10 times to set up a call and things like that. So the other thing that we have to speak towards this is when we're talking about some of your processes that are in the system. And that's, it does kind of touch on some of our automation, right? But it's important. How
they find you, they like you. Now, how do they get a hold of you and how do they work with you?
There has to be a whole process in there, and that makes it easier for you to accept the lead and for you to work with them. And some of the tools that we speak about inside the playbook really help with that and really set that automation up to make it a smooth experience, as smooth as possible as it can be. One of my favorites is the scheduler. And
oh my God, changed my life. Literally changed my life.
I think it's, you know, it's so important to note that, you know, we might speak about one vendor or the other, or, you know, one scheduler or the other, you know, within the playbook, but it's the concepts that we're teaching.
It doesn't matter.
No, you can go use whatever you feel works best for you. What works best for me might not work best for, you know, Alpaca Your Bags, right? But and we've had many conversations about that, about different tools that we use and why we use them, and neither one of them is right or wrong for the other person. But having one. Yeah, having that scheduler in place is the important part. So like for Destination Weddings Expert, we use Acuity. And so when people are looking to speak to us, they get a link. It's a simple link. You go in there, you can pick which expert that you want to work with, the date and the time that's available to them. It's linked directly to our calendars. So there's never any scheduling conflict unless, you know, you have not updated your calendar, which is your own damn fault. That's, you know, but but you know, but with that scheduler in place, there's no, you know, there's not 10-15 emails going back and forth like, hey, I've got Tuesday afternoon at 2:00 open. Oh, I can't do that. Let's do 7:00 at night. I don't take 7:00 at night calls.
What a waste of time. It's such a waste of time. And it makes you look messy. Like, let's be real. Like, nobody wants to do all that. And this is an audience that is very, very skilled and used to doing things online. So don't make it harder. Don't make it harder for people to want to spend money with you. Just don't make it harder.
Exactly.
Have a process.
And then that scheduler, that also acts as kind of your first line of, this is probably going to come out wrong, but your first line of defense for people who you know, may have attracted into your funnel, but might not be the best fit for you or your agency. Right. So within that scheduler, it's easy to set up just an intake form that talks about, you know, who the person is, what their ideal location is, what their group is expecting, how many people they're expecting, you know, all these questions that you can be asking that qualifies them to work with you.
Yeah. And there's an art and science to this, like that so Acuity, Calendly, there's a bunch of them out there. They all have a free version. We're not telling you to spend money, especially when you're building and you may not have it. There's a free version for everything. So there's an art to, you want to ask enough questions to get a feel for what they're looking for and get a feel for their personality. But nobody wants to do homework and nobody wants to write a dissertation on their wedding. You could scare people off if you write too much. So I think there is a balance of, you know, a few key wedding questions that are important to you to make it clear if that person is a good fit for you. And then maybe some like fun personality type questions, you know, that are there so you can get a feel, and then like a blank spot where they can write whatever they want. And then you can see, and you don't have to take a call with everyone that schedules time with you. It's a good screener, which I think is what you were kind of getting to. Like, it's a good screening device too, because not everyone's going to be a good fit.
That's the first point where, you know, if they come in and they say, hey, my budget, the max budget I have is $15,000 and I'm inviting 200 people to my wedding, it's really easy at that point to say, hey, you know, we can jump on a call and talk about this a little bit further. Or, you know, it might be a graceful way of saying, I don't think that we might be the best fit. You know,
an education moment of like, hey, I saw, before you even have the call, hey, I saw in your note that you're inviting like, you know, 375 people and you have a $5,000 budget. How did you get there? Tell me about that. What are the things that are the most important to you? And then, you know, ask them to elaborate a little bit. And based on their answers, you can see if they just don't know. Like, a lot of people just don't have a clue how much things cost. Or if they're just going to be like stubborn and inflexible, then they're probably not a good match.
And or one of my favorites is, you know, I'm having the wedding in Mexico. I'm having it there because I want it to be cheap. And there's a difference between being cost effective with the budget that you're working with and being cheap. It's, if you're having a destination wedding in Mexico, in the Caribbean, you know, wherever you're having a destination wedding, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the, you know, a super cheap option. You're going to get everything for cheap. We were just having a conversation about this. The vendors, you know, the cost of some vendors are right in line with, you know, what it costs in the States. Sometimes it depends on who you're looking at, what your vision is, everything like that. That's the other thing that I think is super important for us to talk about here, is that we're talking about engagement season and getting ready for engagement season. So please know that we're not speaking just towards brand new agents that are coming in here and listening to the podcast and saying, hey, I should be setting this up. We are definitely speaking towards also existing agents who have been in the industry, even the ones that have been in the industry for a long time, that all of a sudden, you know, now is the time to go back and look at that scheduler. It's been out there. It's been the same for 5 years. Do all of those questions still make sense on the intake form?
Oh gosh, I just had to clean up mine because I still had COVID questions on there. And I was like, oh, I got to get rid of that. It's been a minute. Like, don't be complacent. Take a really honest look at yourself and what you're putting out there too, because some of it probably needs to be updated.
Absolutely. So I just think it's important to make sure that all of that is relevant. That also then leads into, you know, if you move past the scheduler and you're talking about your nurture sequence. So these people are now, they already have an appointment with you, or they've already held the consultation with you and they haven't hired you yet. What does that nurture sequence look like? And what are those conversations? Making sure that you're having a respectful and polite, maybe educational conversation with them without you having to, you know, send each one of those emails separately. And it's something that the conversation is generally the same all the way through. So making sure that your nurture sequence is just as updated as, you know, some of the top of funnel pieces that are out there.
I pulled out my flow desk because I wanted to look at, so let's explain what a nurture sequence is for people who may not know. So someone schedules an appointment with you because you've sent them to a place on your website. Ideally, you have some kind of like landing page that talks about why destination weddings are great, why you're different than other people out there, why they should work with you. And then the whole goal is to get them on a consult, which we have a whole episode coming about consults, but that could either be a Zoom or phone or however you communicate best. Like, you don't have to do what everyone else does. You do what works for you. But you've probably found that when you get on those calls, people don't know what you're going to talk about. They're not prepared. They're nervous. They think you're just going to make them sign. It's like buying a car, which we were talking about how much I hate. You walk into that transaction feeling like nervous because you don't know what you're doing and you think someone just wants your money, and it's nerve-wracking. So a nurture sequence is a really great way to kind of like warm people up before you get them on that consult. So if they make an appointment, maybe you send them a couple, 2, 3, don't be crazy, but, you know, don't be intrusive, but maybe 2 to 3 emails of like, I'm so glad that you're taking the time. I can't wait to meet with you. Here's what the call is going to be like. Like, one of my emails is literally just an agenda. I'm going to ask you these questions. I'm going to ask you things like, are your friends and family on board? What kind of budget range do you want? It's okay if you don't know. Have you talked to any hotels? Do you have any destinations in mind? Literally just prepare them. Nobody likes to be like caught off guard. And so use automation to your advantage. And then what that does is that frees up 20 minutes of the call. You don't have to talk about those things. They're already in the right mindset and thinking about it. So a nurture sequence is a great like 2 or 3 email series that comes after they make the appointment to warm them up. So when you tell them a little bit about you. That's my second one, how I got into this, where I came from, who I am. And now when I get on a consult with them, I don't have to spend valuable minutes talking about those things. And a nurture sequence can be just emails. It could be a video. It could be a link to something that you want them to read before, a PDF. It doesn't matter. It's just a way to keep the communication going, because the more they engage with you, the more they're going to be on board before you even get on the phone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important to kind of have those conversations ahead of time. And warm up the conversation so that you're not jumping into it cold. They are as comfortable as possible as, at getting into the call. And then that, before they even get there, they feel like they know the person that they're speaking to.
So mine is, here's what we're going to talk about here. Oh, no, it's here's who I am. First of all, that would make sense. Introduce yourself first. Like, hey, thanks for finding me. Obviously we have something in common. Like, it's written better than this, but here's who I am. I got into this because I planned my own destination wedding and I didn't like the options that were out there. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. We live, south of Kansas City. It's like literally telling people who I am. That's the first email that they get. And then the second one is, thanks for setting up the time. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're not going to make any major life-changing decisions. This is a low pressure, just us to get to know each other here. But here's the things I'm going to ask you so you can start thinking about it. And then the third one is, we have our time together today. Here's why destination weddings are great. It's just like, here's all the things that I think are amazing about destination weddings and what I can't wait to share with you. And so that kind of warms them up, and that gets us to the conversion part of the series.
Exactly. So then, then from conversion, now we're talking about kind of a follow-up plan, right? And what it looks like after you had the consult, and after, once you're ready to move forward with closing that deal with the couple and making sure that they have everything they need to make the decision that to move forward with you.
Yeah. So we attracted them. We made sure that everything we're putting out to the universe is reflective of who we are and who we want to work with. We have a clean, easy to follow process that helps couples feel less overwhelmed, because let's face it, getting engaged and planning a wedding is one of the most overwhelming experiences these couples are ever going to have. Your goal is to make it look easy. Your goal is to be that big brother, big sister that's going to help coach them through this process. Then we have a consult where everyone has a great time. They get to know us, we get to know them. I'm glossing over this because we have a whole episode planned about consults, but let's assume it goes positively. What happens next?
Right.
I think a big mistake that people make is they do not have a plan for follow-up. You can't just have this amazing time and then ghost them. It can't work that way.
And that's why I think this episode is so important. Everything that we kind of covered here, it's making sure that everything is in place so that once we hit December, which by the way, by the time you're listening to this episode, you're in December, right? So
yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
Catch up.
So I think it's so important that you take the time to look at these sequences, to look at the entire journey that your ideal couple is going through as they come into your funnel, from all the way from the top of the funnel through the bottom of the funnel, to make sure that you're understanding what they're experiencing with you, so that when we're ready to pull the trigger and hit go, that it's the way that you want it to be. I don't want to say polished, because like we said, keep it authentic and keep it yourself, but it needs to be authentic to you all the way.
I'm going to challenge that a bit. We want you to be your authentic, amazing self, but your process should be polished. We don't want you don't want to have amazing personality and then a clunky hot mess of a process, right? Because you're also, don't forget that you're selling yourself as a service. You have to show them you're on top of it, that things happen the way that they're supposed to, that, everything needs to look like a finely organized and it just has to work. It can't be messy, because they're hiring you to plan their wedding or to help with the travel for their wedding. So if your initial experience is not great, that just creates doubt in their mind. And they're just going to think, what is this person going to be like to work with? Look at your email sequences and test them. Set yourself up as a test client and fill out your scheduler, make an appointment with yourself, see how the emails come through, how they look, how that, does everything happen in the right order? When you use name tags, merge fields and stuff like that, is the name populating correctly, or are they getting an email that says dear name? Nobody wants to feel good about that. So just really, really test the process, because while we are saying, be your authentic, messy self for your personality, your process cannot be unpolished. It has to be finished.
If I didn't communicate that properly, yes, that's
because you're a mess.
if you are a hot mess express, please do not. That should not translate through, right? That's it. The process itself should be extremely polished. We just want to make sure that it doesn't feel corporate or cold or
This is the time to test all these things out, especially if you're going to make changes. Like I talked about finding like COVID copy on my website still, like, I have to tweak that a little bit. I have to look at all my emails and make sure that things are still going out in the right order. And also, this is a time to make changes. If you're like, oh, I didn't really connect with any of my couples last year, or it didn't quite work the way that I wanted to, guess what? You're in charge and you can change it. And this is the time to make those changes, but just test it and make sure that everything works.
Absolutely.
I feel like I had something else to say and I forgot. The theme of today.
Ashley, I want to thank you very much again for jumping in on episode 6 and walking us through kind of what engagement season is, how we should be preparing for it, how should we get it ready, and I'll see you on episode 7.
Yes. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Running a travel business may have its challenges, but with a dash of humor, the right tools, an amazing community, and a lot of wine, success awaits us all. Raise a glass with us and toast to your remarkable journey.
Don't forget, if you're ready to take the next step in your travel career, one where you can focus on developing your niche, attracting leads, converting them into new clients, and automating your systems, you can build the business of your dreams. If you're ready, join us in the Playbook Inner Circle at jointheplaybook.com. We can't wait to see you inside.